to know more about
Absolutely. And you have my permission as well. If you need to take any pictures for social media purposes or whatever,
Yes,
I'm okay with that. As
you
long
can.
as you tag me or share them with me.
You can do it. No problem. Yes.
Well, hello, students. My name is Paul Tim. I am a middle school, high school science teacher in Lyons, Nebraska, which is in the center of the United States, but I'm in the northeastern corner. And so what I was hoping to do is quickly give you just a trip to Lyons. I have that pulled up on Google Earth. Let me share my screen. Okay, can everyone give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen now? Excellent. And so I'm going to be presenting today about birds, but before I do so, I just want to give you a visit to where I live. This is Lyons, Nebraska. We are in the northeastern corner of the state of Nebraska in the middle of the United States. My hometown of Lyons, which I went to school here as a student. It has been my blessing and privilege to come back to where I grew up as a child, the son of a pig farmer, and to come back and teach science in the classroom where I learned to love science. And so it's been a real privilege. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit so you can see we are located very close to one of the major rivers in the United States, the Missouri River. There are two towns that are represented in our school district of Lyons, Decatur. Decatur actually exists along the Missouri River, which is part of the Mississippi River Basin. And that river basin drains 1/3 of all the water in the United States into the Gulf of Mexico and then into the Atlantic Ocean. And so you can see as we zoom out here, get a little bit more perspective of where I live. I'm going to be talking about birds today. And one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about teaching about birds is I think there's a lot to be learned and a lot to be observed by students and a lot of questions to be posed, but also I'm in a very natural location. Nebraska in any given year will have well over 400 species, different species of birds migrate through our state. Some of them are coming from as far south as countries like Brazil and South America and flying as far north as Alaska and Canada. Some of them even migrate over the Bering Strait into Asia and then have return flights in the fall heading back south for the winter. And so we have the privilege in Nebraska, which Nebraska is an agricultural state. We have lots of production farming, cattle. We grow corn and soybeans. We have hogs or pigs. And we're very much a rural or agricultural state in the center of the United States. Now, in reference to you guys, I'm always interested in location and place. And so I happen to do a little bit of viewing on Google Earth where you guys are located. And this is where I found you. I'm hoping that this is the correct location. One of the things I love to do is I love maps and I love exploring. I'm a National Geographic certified educator. I don't know if you guys are familiar with a magazine called National Geographic. It's kind of a worldwide science and geography magazine. But I love asking the questions that National Geographic asks: where, why there, and why care? I'm going to say that again: where, why there, and why care? And anytime we're looking at a region or something that we're unfamiliar with, even something like an organism like birds, if we can identify where they're located, if we can answer the question, why are they located there? And then the question of why should we care? If we can incorporate caring with location and purpose, that is a combination for dynamic impact. And so that's where, as I'm sitting here with you guys, from my understanding, you're all somewhere between 12 to 15, 16 years old. You guys are at an exciting place in your lives where you're discovering your passions. I heard Harry talk about passion, and the fact that you guys are here at 9 o'clock at night, and that Harry has been working with me to plan this months in advance because he's so passionate about inspiring you and your passions so that you might develop the skills to be successful in what you want to do in the future. If we can think about where you are and where you want to be, why you are where you're at, and why you want to do what you want to do. And if you can develop a passion, a caring about something, and then develop the skills to support doing what you care about, you're going to have a very exciting life of doing things that you have choices in what you want to do and what to care about, rather than being forced into situations where you're just kind of, maybe you're doing something, but it's not exactly what you're passionate about. And for me, I love teaching students and I love teaching science. So that brings me into my presentation for the day. And I titled this presentation of something called an idiom. I didn't know for sure. So an idiom is a phrase that doesn't necessarily mean exactly what it says. And so there's a phrase related to birds called birds of a feather flock together. And if anyone has ever observed birds before, you've probably noticed that some birds like to fly around in groups, and other birds just like to hang out by themselves. And so this phrase, this idiom, means that people who like certain things tend to group together in similar groups, right? People who like sports tend to like to gather together. People who like birds tend to gather together and study them. People who enjoy creating arts and crafts or doing art, they gather together. And so right now I'm gathering together a group of students, you guys, and it's with my hope that I will produce a curiosity in you about birds that will eventually turn you into bird observers and bird enthusiasts, people excited about birds. Because I can tell you, as a teacher, when I first was when I was a student taken with a teacher to go observe birds and study birds, I wasn't interested in it. I thought it was silly. I was a sports kid. I was more interested in going and playing American football or basketball. I didn't really care. And I didn't really notice the birds that were all around me every day. But that teacher inspired a passion in me. And so now I'm here trying to hope and share and instill a passion in you that we might become a flock of individuals interested in birds. So today I'm going to, number one, say why we should study birds and why I teach birds. I'm going to focus on why I do that. I've kind of talked a little bit about that already. I'm going to address the questions that you shared with Harry, that he shared with me, because I love it when I get questions from students. And then lastly, I would like to share some resources that I have collected over the years or that I've found that are helpful in getting people curious about the where, why there, and why care about birds. And some of them specifically related to India that are accessible to you. If you're joining me on one of these today, there is a movement of something called community science. Scientists are recognizing that when they perform science and when they do science, if they can get more people making observations, collecting information, and sharing that information with the scientists, they can do a better job of exploring the scientific questions that they are researching. And these things are amazing devices for recording observations. And you and me and Harry, we may not have PhDs in ornithology, which is the study of birds, but you and I can learn to recognize the difference between a bird that's a sparrow and a bird that's a crane. And by sharing what we see with scientists through some really fun apps that are almost like games, those scientists can get the information they need to do the research they do. But I'm jumping ahead there just a little bit. Let's start with why do I study birds and why are they so interesting? Well, first place, I'm going to just give you a few facts. Birds are absolutely amazing. Birds have a top flight speed. There's a bird called the peregrine falcon, and falcons are birds of prey. They're predators. They can fly up to 200 miles per hour in their dive, which is the equivalent of about 435 kilometers per hour. That's fast, okay? For something that is living to be able to travel that fast and live after it has traveled that fast is absolutely amazing. Birds do something called migration. Now, migration is a good vocab term to kind of file in the back of your head. What is migration? Some of you may have studied that in your science classes. Any living organism that travels from one location to another for the purpose of locating resources or reproduction or finding new habitat is called a migration. And the bird that carries the record for migrating, according to National Geographic, is the Hudsonian godwit, which you can see in the upper right-hand corner. That bird will fly from southern Brazil north into northern Canada every spring. And then in the fall, after it's raised its babies in northern Canada, it flies back to southern Brazil. Now, just think about that. Think if every year you and I got on a ship or we got on an airplane and we changed locations halfway around the world. You came to Lyons and I took you to my home and you lived with Mr. Tim and you went to school here for half a year. And then you'd fly back to your home and live the other half a year there. They do that every year without jet engines, without propellers, and they'll do it up to 12 to 14 years within their lifespan, 12 to 14 times. That's absolutely amazing. What can we learn as humans from what God has put in those birds to give them the ability to do that? Could we make better airplanes? Could we make better engineered systems from the things we can learn from birds? Yes, we can. Birds are shown to be the second most intelligent animal. They used to think it was pigs. And then they did some research in Washington University. They discovered that birds not only have a memory that can last for years, but they can actually solve up to an 8-step problem. And you can find that video on YouTube. Ravens and crows were the birds that they did the research on, which are a big black bird. And I know over in India that you have raven species that exist there. They're considered to be the smartest bird. Yes. I apologize, I couldn't hear you. Could you say? You have birds that are bigger than a human wingspan, that are 12 foot long in their wing reach and have the ability to glide on the winds up high above the earth and soar. They're very unique in what and how they're made. They have adaptations. There's another science vocabulary term. They have specific behaviors and body structures that give them the ability to perform certain tasks. The hummingbird's heartbeat will beat 300 beats every minute. I'm not certain I could take my fingers and do 300 of these in a minute, yet their heart every day is beating 300 beats a minute. That's amazing. That's amazing. Birds have been studied for, as I talked about before, engineers have built airplanes and things based upon their structures. One of the things that we forget about sometimes is that because birds are everywhere, we as human beings can observe them, notice changes in them, and use those to measure changes in our environment. There's a viral disease called West Nile virus, and it exists in mosquitoes. Well, it travels through birds, horses, and humans. And so by monitoring dead birds, now, I don't know if this sounds like a very fun job for you kids, but there are some scientists out there, some medical doctors, that their job is to go out to the roads and the highways where trucks travel and cars travel and pick up dead birds off the road. And they will measure, they will take blood samples and tissue samples, and they'll test them to see if they have this particular virus in them. And by monitoring birds, we can monitor the movement of that West Nile virus from the southern coasts of the United States up into the northern states and the Canadian border every summer and predict and prepare for people getting sick in our hospitals. Many other diseases, the common flu. I bet you've had the flu before. That resides in the stomachs of birds, specifically geese. And so we monitor bird populations to measure human diseases and their movement through the population. They serve specific jobs, ecological functions within our environments. And so when birds are out there eating insects, when they're out there eating worms, when they're out there pooping, defecating in the environment, that fecal material fertilizes plants that grows. In Nebraska, there's a joke because we don't have many trees in Nebraska. We're a grassland. There's a joke that if you want trees to grow, build a fence. Now, why would you build primary planters of trees in Nebraska? Because they'll eat the seeds off the trees. We have these trees called mulberry trees, and they produce these little berries. The birds will eat those seeds, and then when they land on a fence, they'll defecate. That's the scientific word for poop. They'll poop those seeds out on the ground, and those seeds will sprout and grow. In fact, there's some seeds, there's some trees that until they pass through the digestive system of a bird and are pooped out, they cannot grow. The stomach juices, the acids, break the seed down enough, the seed coat, so that it can grow where it's deposited by the bird. You learned a new fact today. Birds are absolutely amazing. They're also just beautiful. I think sometimes when we get so focused on science, we're looking at technical things and we're measuring things, but we need to remember the arts of creation too. And when we look at something beautiful, like a hummingbird or birds, find birds. So what do I do, and what do I do to help my students learn about birds? Well, if I just sat here and talked about them all day, they'd get really bored. And so I have to get really creative. I have my students do tournaments, and they will be assigned a bird, and they'll create videos, 90-second videos about what is their favorite bird and why. They'll even have to do little advertisements where you'll have to vote on who's your favorite bird. I'm going to play an example of one of my students right here.
Do you like movies with sword fights? If so, you'll like the northern pintail, the musketeer of the bird world. He has a white stripe down his back like a sheath, and a bill that shines like a sword. His tail is like a sword, poised to strike. He is an eager nester, flying north to nest as soon as the ice melts. He migrates from the southern U.S. and Mexico to Canada and Alaska. The oldest was 22 years, 3 months old. They migrate at night, like a ninja. They incubate their eggs for 22 to 24 days. So, if you like sword fights or swords, vote for the northern pintail, the musketeer of the bird world.
And so I'll have my students create those videos, and then we will have the public, because we'll share them on YouTube, vote on their favorite. And we have it every year in March. We have a 64 bird tournament in which we have the public vote on their favorite videos of the students. And you can kind of see that bracket over here. And if that's something that you or your teacher, Harry, would like to participate in, we're going to be doing it again next year in March. And we'd love to have you vote in that. I have them create artwork. One of the students had sent me a question. How did I can?
Yeah. So they feel privileged to interact with a great teacher from Nebraska. So who is going to ask the first question?
Sir, can I?
Yes. So turn your camera on. Yes. Introduce yourself.
Hello, sir. I'm Saina.
Hello.
I'm Saina Gastri. I'm studying 8th grade. My hobbies are reading books, playing games, and watching TV. Sir, I would like to pose a question. Can I pose?
Absolutely. Yes, please.
Why is science subject is different from other subjects?
So your question, and I'm just going to repeat it to make sure that I heard you correctly, because sometimes my audio is hard to hear. So you asked, why is science different than other subjects?
Yes, sir.
Science focuses on what we can observe and measure in the natural world. And so if you think about all the different ways that you experience the places around you, you taste, you smell, you hear, you see, and you feel. You have your 5 senses. Science is focused on exploring everything in existence that exists that we can detect with those 5 senses. Now, over the years, we've discovered there's many things that are invisible, that we can't hear, that we can't taste, that we can't smell, that we can't measure. But through the invention of technologies, we've discovered that they're there. And so science is all about exploring and discovering and asking questions. And that's what I think makes science so unique compared to other subjects, is that that's its main goal, is to discover, to explore, and to understand how things in the natural world work.
So very cool explanation. Sai Surya, over to you. Sai Surya?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Hello, Sai.
From the grade, I am 12 years old. My hobbies are reading books, playing games, and watching TV. My future ambition is to become a police officer. Can I ask a question, sir?
You may.
How can you teaching science more interesting?
How do I make science interesting for my students? I tell my students that it is a very natural thing to be curious. Do you understand what it means to be curious, Sai? Are there things that you're curious about? Are there things that you're interested in?
Yes. Sai Surya, what are your the things that you are so curious to know? So do you have any other topics or subjects so curious, so keen to learn? Can you mention any subject?
English, yeah.
English.
Well, what I do to get my students excited about learning science is I get them asking questions that they are curious about. And so remember, I told you that I was not interested in birds when my teacher tried to teach me about birds. I thought, boring. I want to learn about football, right? But by making me ask questions, I have an assignment I do with my students called the 30 questions assignment. And so I have them identify something in science they're interested in. And I ask them, write me 30 questions you have about that plant, that tree, that rock, the sun. I get them asking questions. And what they discover as they start asking questions, they get interested. Even the things that they're not interested about, when they take time to observe them and ask questions, they become interested. And so that's how I get my students interested.
Yeah, that means that it's truly inspirational teacher, I think, because only inspirational teachers can do that.
Absolutely.
Yes. Tedipya,
Absolutely.
over to you.
Yes, sir. Hi, sir. My name is Tedipya. I'm studying 7th grade. My hobbies are reading books, playing games, and watching TV. My life ambition is to become a software engineer. Can I ask you a question, sir?
You may.
Who is your favorite ornithologist?
My favorite ornithologist would be a man by the name of Audubon, is his last name, James Audubon. He was an explorer and an ornithologist that did his paintings and did his research of North American birds well over 2 centuries ago. And if you look up bird art on the internet or find books that deal with bird art and identification, many of his paintings are still used in bird books today. James Audubon.
So it's very interesting, I think. Yes. Any more participants? Nagalakshmi, do you have any question?
Yes, sir.
Hello, sir. This is Nagasri. I am a ninth grader. My hobbies are reading books and playing games. Can I ask one question, sir?
You may.
Could you please list out the topics that you teach to your students?
It's a very long list. So I'm in a small school, and the school has students that are 5 years old to 18 years old. And I'm in charge of the students that are 11 years old to 18 for science. And so I teach biology, earth and space science, science research. I have students learn to do research on their own topics, human anatomy and physiology, so the human body. I teach a lot. Basically all science except for chemistry and physics.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Let's see, I see here that there was did anyone else have other questions that they would like to share?
Lohita, over to you.
Okay, sir. Hello, sir. I am Lohita Girija. I am in 9th grade. I am 14 years old. My hobbies are reading books, playing games, watching TV, and dancing. Can I ask one question, sir?
Yes, you may.
How do you motivate students to learn science?
That's a very good question, because it relates back to that third question I asked of why care. Getting students to want to learn is a problem of getting them to care. And so I first focus on getting them to trust me as their teacher. Sometimes students, they're a little hesitant to learn about something until they know that I care about them. And I'm not just here to get them to do homework, but I'm here to get them to care about science and care about applying it in their lives. But it's hard for them to care till they know I care about them. So once I establish trust and a relationship with my students and respect, that's something that's very important within my classroom, is that I extend them respect, they extend me respect, they extend each other respect. I kind of create a journey that we're on, and I get them wanting to be on the journey with me. It's kind of like we're explorers in a boat and we're going somewhere and we're a part of this big story, and don't you want to come join us? That's kind of the attitude I take with my students. And what I discover is even some of my more challenging students, after a little bit of time, when they realize they can trust me and that I care about them, they get in the boat and join us.
Yeah, that's a great explanation. I think it's truly inspirational. And Bhagyasri, over to you.
Yes, sir. Hello, sir. My name is Bhagyasri. I'm studying 9th grade. My hobbies are reading books and playing games. My future ambition is to become a doctor. Shall I ask one question, sir?
You may.
What are the best strategies in teaching science?
Oh, good question. The best strategies in teaching science is observing and questioning. Best teaching strategies. And my two best strategies is to get them observing and get them asking questions. Those are my two strategies that in my 19 years of teaching have not failed me.
So I think these days science teachers, especially in my region, and they are not focusing on the live experiments. So I usually recommend the science teachers to go for the live experiments rather than explaining the things theoretically. I'm quite against explaining the science subject in theoretical manner. And that's really unfortunate. And though we have enough resources to take the students outside of the classroom and beyond the classroom, but
that really is a challenge in teaching today. not having the resources or not having the ability to, the freedom as a teacher to use the teachable moment and take them. And that, honestly, that's where I'm very blessed in teaching in a small rural school, because I am the only full-time science teacher here. I'm not in a big school with thousands and thousands of students. I have about 20 students per class that I teach, and I teach 6 different classes. But those are the only students 7th grade through 12th grade in Lyons taking science. And I am in control of what gets taught. Now, our state has standards I have to teach to, right? And there's expectations the school has, I have to teach certain things. But I have a lot of freedom because my students, I want to teach them about the ocean, but we live a long ways from the ocean. And so sometimes the materials that you're given to teach with don't match the setting the kids are in. And that's, my kids know farming, they know soil, and you know, I use what's around us. And that's why birds, I think, are fantastic for teaching a lot of scientific concepts, but also teaching kids how to do inquiry. How do you perform science? Science isn't just memorizing things. That's a small part of building knowledge so you can ask better questions. We learn about science, so ultimately we can observe and make observations and then ask questions. The more we learn, the better the questions we can ask, right? I think about what I would have asked as a kid that was 5 years old, growing up on the farm, when I first saw pigs out in the pen. And now I might have asked, well, why are they eating? Why are they pink, right? But as I learn more about pigs, and I'm just using that as an example because that's what I grew up with as a kid, I would expect different questions from a 16-year-old than a 5-year-old if I've spent 11 years living on a farm caring for livestock. They should be more scientific questions, right? The more we learn, the better we get at asking questions, making observations, and then hopefully proposing theories or ideas on how the world works or how to solve a problem. Let's see. Do we have all our students back or?
Yes, they are.
Hello, sir. This is Nandini. Would you allow me to ask a question?
Yes, you may.
What made you to show special interest in ornithology?
It was my teacher. It was my teacher that got me inspired to be interested in it. It's kind of funny. I didn't become truly interested in teaching it until after I started teaching. I have an undergraduate degree in agricultural sciences with teaching endorsements in biology and agriculture. I also have a teaching endorsement in human health sciences. But my master's degree is in entomology, which is the study of insects, specifically with a focus on honeybees. My family, we have honeybees. So I didn't become super interested in birds until after I got my master's degree and was already out teaching for a couple of years.
Yes.
I'm just going to share a message with you first. I want to encourage you to thank your teacher for providing these opportunities and for trying to be an inspiration to you. And I'm hoping that there might be a few people in here that might consider being teachers in the future. It is something that I hadn't thought about till I was 18 years old. And I'm so happy I did. Because it's very fulfilling to be able to work with students. So I just want to encourage you to thank your teacher and think about being a teacher. But also I want to encourage you to just observe the world that is around you and strive to notice the things that you're not noticing and ask questions of why they are the way they are. There's so many natural things around us, living things and non-living things that we walk by, that we encounter every day, that we don't take notice of, nor ask questions about why are they there, Why should we care about them? How do they work?